In this lesson, I will talk about the mediation, steps in mediation process as well as the types of it. Mediation is perceived as one of the several tools of conflict resolution. Some scholars underline that mutual consent as a key character of the mediation process and differentiates the mediation from the third-party military intervention, sanctions or other types of third-party intervention unaccepted or undesired by disputants. Mediation is a non-coercive intervention without promising any reward or punishment by a third party in conflict of two or more political entities. Third party as a mediator might not be only state. Individuals, non-governmental or international organization can also be mediators. In the mediation process, there are several steps. First step in mediation initiative is to assess the conflict. In general, this step includes four activities. Firstly, the mediator should understand what the conflict is about. Secondly, the mediator is supposed to understand who are the actors. Thirdly, mediators should understand the larger context. And fourthly, which is final one, mediator needs to understand sources of power and leverage to the conflictual sides. The first step is that the mediator understand what the conflict is about. In order to communicate effectively with parties, a mediator needs to analyze the history and cause of the conflict as it matters to the participants, including key symbols and turning points. Some of these will be an ancient history, some of it will be lately fabricated. Following step is to identify what is being contested, whether it is territory, sovereignty and local autonomy, control of national resources, or wealth, religious or ethnic identity. Mediator needs to assess position and interests that includes identifying issues and positions, differentiating between states' positions and underlying interests, considering interactions among issues, position and interests. Furthermore, understanding the actors is a very important part of the mediation process. In this regard, the mediator should analyze the parties of the conflict to examine the groups involved, analyze their internal structure, identify leaders and bases of authority, as well as ascertain support for spoilers, assess skills, resources and influence of leaders too. In addition, mediator analyzes civil society and the populace on purpose of assessing the organization of civil society, determining the involvement of the population in the conflict, understanding the living conditions of the populace as well. It is also important to identify other players like profiling diasporas, identifying the involvement of NGOs, influential states, international organizations, assessing their leverage, identifying relevant media and their role as well. Next phase is understanding the larger context, like assessing existing government, legal, economic, social, international and security institutions and processes. In the process of successful mediation, it is better mediator understands the sources of power and leverage. Ensuring mediator readiness is second step. In this step, the mediator also needs to know whether he or she has the appropriate skills, resources, and support to be successful. Mediators might play very diverse roles indeed. That diversity extends far beyond the division between Track 1 initiatives launched by governments and Track 2 initiatives conducted by private organizations and individuals. Some mediators, for example, facilitate while others manipulate. In this regard, mediator needs to determine what role is appropriate. In other words, third parties should determine the right mediation role given backing and resources, ensuring that the mediation strategy is appropriate to the mediator's identity. Enhancing the ability to engage effectively is another factor to achieve success in mediation process. Thus, credibility and trust are the essential to conflict mediation. That's why it is important to build credibility with the parties, develop and strengthen a broader portfolio of skills. It is important to recognize cultural differences through becoming familiar with local styles of communication, as well as considering how the mediator's identity will be received. Next, third step is ensuring conflict ripeness. In addition to ensuring that parties are ready to resolve a conflict, the mediator should also ensure that the conflict is ready to be settled. A conflict might become ripe for negotiation when conflict sides recognize that they are in a mutually hurting stalemate. Both sides become aware they cannot defeat the enemy. Thus, the continued violence will be costly and ineffective, as well as will risk weakening their situation. Otherwise, mediator has tasked to enhance ripeness through helping allies to understand costs of continued violence, patterns of interdependence, as well as benefits of ending the conflict. If the parties are not eager to step back, it is important to increase pressure on allies through accountability. Regarding to step 4, readiness of the parties come to the agenda. Once the mediator assesses the conflict, determine readiness of the parties to act and evaluate, and if necessary, enhance ripeness, the mediator is ready to begin the first stage of the process, which is the negotiation. While a large number of stakeholders will be consulted, relatively few will participate in direct negotiations. The mediators need to work with partners who have efficient control over the drivers of the conflict and violence and relevant consistencies. Negotiations often involve the top leaders of each party or their direct representatives. Mid-level leaders are known by the top leaders yet have broader connection to constituencies. It is better mediator involve spoilers in the process as well. If spoilers continue to hinder the process, mediators should find ways to marginalize them. Next step is step 5, which includes involvement of track 2 dialogue. Although the mediator is supposed to mediate the negotiations between the official leaders of the parties, it is also important to encourage track 2 dialogue. Track 2, or unofficial diplomacy, conducted among grassroots and mid-level leaders of conflict parties, might add valuable insight to the formal peace negotiations. Track 2 efforts might assist the local community engage in the tasks and make the necessary psychological change required to generate and strengthen assistance for peace processes. They can also generate new constructive ideas, issues that can be included in the negotiation process. However, promotion of cooperation between tracks is very essential to share information and clarify roles. Step 6, or final step in the mediation process, is building an agreement that is acceptable not only to the leaderships of the parties to the conflict, but also to the wider public, and that stands a good chance of being implemented successfully in the societies. In general, mediators possess different incentives and motivations for their engagement in peace building. The interests of neutral mediators do not directly support any side to offer their mediation and end the civil war. This motivation might be driven by humanitarian intentions and generous impulses, as well as political interests that characterize their reputation and image. In this regard, if war starts or continues, neutral mediators abide costs. Biased mediation is less sensitive to the costs related to the provision of mediation than unbiased brokers. It means that if the mediation is cheap to mediate, then third party will be eager to suggest intervening. Thanks a lot for watching us.